Hey everyone, before we start, the WGA, aka the Writers Guild of America, is on strike in California and New York over working conditions, pay disputes, and a lack of communication, among many other issues from the major studios where they work. Writers are some of the most important aspects of creating the art that you all love, and without them, actors wouldn't know what to say, animators can't bring their words to life, and you wouldn't have some of the most iconic pieces of dialogue in media history. The studios are threatening the livelihoods of the writers by taking away their pay and their jobs, being replaced with AI, even crafting scripts with AI, and then doing the dubious work of having said writers rewrite those scripts when the strike is over. These execs think they can run without them, but in fact, they cannot. With the multitude of guilds and groups standing with the WGA, it may halt the production of the material you watch. It's pretty obvious that people are no longer accepting the working conditions they are forced under by the execs and are demanding residuals from streaming releases, as well as more context and data about the numbers, the shows, and projects they work on, due to the constant nonsense pulled by Netflix and other companies with the hiding of their numbers. The execs are going to act like the house is not on fire, as they plan on waiting it out. But sooner or later, their ways are going to catch up to them on their yacht. Now then, if you want to keep up with the news and updates about supporting the strikes, follow WGA West and WGA East on Twitter to see where they will be protesting. If you want to donate cash for the cause, you can go to entertainmentcommunityfund.org. When you make the donation, make sure to designate to film and television, since that's who needs it right now. It is not a strike fund. It's a fund made specifically for people in film and television who are affected by the strike rate. If you truly love the people who craft the stories, then you should donate. Again, don't just do instant boycotts or Twitter fueled boycott. Please follow the WGA West and WGA East accounts and go to the destinations they pick and or donate to the fund at entertainmentcommunityfund.org. We at Renegade Pop Culture stand with the writers and the multitude of guilds and groups that are standing behind the writers for better pay and working conditions. If you like what we do, please give us a like, a follow, and a rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to us. We are everywhere. Also, consider supporting our new Patreon. That way we can keep doing what we love, and that's talking about animation. And now, on with the show.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Renegade Animation on the Renegade Pop Culture Podcast Network. My name is Mike. I'll be your host this evening. Joining me, as always, is the animation guru himself, Cameron.
Howdy, howdy.
And today, we are talking about the second batch of shorts from Star Wars Visions. This time, instead of going all in Japan, these are 9 shorts from all across the world. Before we dive into each individual short, Cameron, I want to ask you your overall thoughts on Volume 2.
Well, animation is in an interesting spot right now. A multitude of studios are truly bringing out a new wave of artists and creatives to craft new distinct visual styles, whether it's Into the Spider-Verse, Klaus, SEAL Team, or Disney jumping into the stylized CGI train with Wish. It's really fun to see the people who work at Lucasfilm say, let's handpick a group of studios with super distinct identities and visual styles to make shorts based within the Star Wars universe, not in any sort of continuity with the universe or the franchise or the films or shows, but just how do they define Star Wars? And while the first volume from, what was it, 2021?
Yeah.
Was very impressive and distinct, it was very hit or miss. And not that they had like bad talent or anything. I mean, when you have Studio Trigger, Studio Colorado, Production IG, Science Saru, it's the execution of those shorts were a mixed bag for me. But with season 2 or volume 2, I think it was a very smart idea to go around the world this time around, because the entire world has amazing studios that a lot of people in the mainstream probably just don't know about, which is sad because a lot of them are really good. I found out about some of these through these short, and I definitely want to see them either do more, make a movie or a show or another short or something, because that's how we keep the blood flowing and the animation evolving, where we give different creatives their own opportunity to make something.
Very well said. One of my takeaways from this is I've noticed over the past couple years, Disney has not really kept up with their Spark shorts, or I'm forgetting the name of the other short series from Disney Animation. But that's what I appreciate about what Star Wars Visions is doing. It's filling a particular void in terms of A, delivering great short film content, and B, specifically in terms of season 2 or volume 2, you do get to see a little bit of what various different cultures from around the world have to bring to one of the biggest properties in pop culture today. And I am really excited to see people who maybe aren't familiar with the works of Cartoon Saloon or Punk Robot or Triggerfish sort of discover these talents for the first time.
Exactly, because I know about them, you know about them either through me or just animation osmosis. But I hope stuff like this helps get them more work, because I would be disappointed if Disney, after they start paying their writers and this whole writer's strike is over and what have you, like if they don't go to these studios to make like a movie or a show or another special or short, it's just like opportunity wasted with going to these amazing people to make something wonderful. And who knows, maybe something original and not based off of Star Wars. But, that's a pipe dream that the animation industry is having to deal with right now. But a hopeful one. I'm optimistic. We're going to go in chronological order. No ranking or anything here. Because for me, even if I could rank these shorts, these are all miles better and more consistent with Volume 1 shorts. Like, I think they're way better, but not to dismiss the other ones. We're just going to go in chronological order. Chronologically, the first one up is Sith from Madrid, Spain's El Guri studio, which is directed by Rodrigo Blas and written by him also, where we encounter a ex-Sith who is hiding away on an asteroid, trying to find her balance in life through her art, when she gets like a feeling of someone from her past is there to find her. And it turns out to be her old master, who doesn't have a name, but as a Sith Lord and what have you. I really like this one. I thought this was a perfect one to kick the gates down and open and such.
I agree. And one of the cool things about this is, A, the stylization of the animation is just gorgeous. I love the use of color, the use of black, just like the environments that these characters are in. It's all very gorgeous. But the other thing is that this is one of the few shorts that the two actors with speaking roles,
Ursula Corbero and Louise Tosar, who play Lola and the Sith Master,
they voice the characters both in English and in their native tongue.
Some of the shorts in this volume can be listened in their own language of origin. So I think it's like Sith and then Journey to the Dark Head are two examples of where you can listen to that one in Korean. And I think the Spy Dancer as well in French. And what I like about Sith is like you said, the use of color, because in her mind, like her world or her like headquarters and home, it's like a blank canvas, metaphorically and literally. It's basically pure white. It looks like a rough sketch before you fit in all the details and color everything in. The journey that Lola takes is finding the balance of light and dark within her to find essentially inner peace. And man, the CGI in this one is so cool looking to do something so visually striking and still able to make you feel enthralled with the atmosphere and like the dread of the Sith Lord going through her base. And how just fluid it all is, and how even though there's a lot of vibrant colors and striking visuals, it never feels too busy.
That's what I like about it. It can be a little bit overwhelming at first, all of the different color, but there's like a rhythm to the environment that they're in. The way we see like these colors kind of bursting out, and also the lightsaber duel between Lola and her master is one of the best lightsaber fights that I've seen in animation.
It's funny because you think with seeing stuff like the original prequel trilogy or any of the animated adaptations and what have you, you would think we would see more dynamic lightsaber duels, but we really don't. And it's so frustrating because I get it. You want to mimic and feel the tension of like Obi-Wan versus Vader or Luke versus Vader for the first time. But we're at a point now where we can do a lot of cooler stuff with action and such. It's not just standing around with a glowing stick and what have you. I love that they capture Lola's state of mind with her surroundings and the world outside her home. And of course, the little droid is adorable with B2, this little walking Death Star. And I love the 2D visual flares, like the jetpacks on the bounty hunters. Or I don't know if they are. It is 2D, but it looks very much so like that like thing that we see in a lot more CGI fare where particle effects and such or smoke are done with like 2D visuals and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I really like this one. This is definitely in my like favorites.
And as you said, this is kind of the perfect one to really kick down the doors for this new batch. If I had to pick an immediate favorite, it would probably be Screecher's Reach. This one is directed by Paul Young, written by Will Collins and Jason Tamamashi. And this is brought to us by the folks at Cartoon Saloon.
Yeah, so this is probably the scariest time or the closest that Star Wars has ever gotten to pure horror. Like, not to have like dark storylines and such, even though this one is intensely dark in just every aspect of the story. But we follow a group of young kids who work at this factory like sweatshop like location, toiling away, which was taken from inspiration of Ireland's own history of these kind of big factory workplaces that the director was like, yeah, we're not proud of that history, that was a thing, and having kids working the mines and what have you, which all things considered, just the perfect timing with that nightmare of a horror story of like them finding a bunch of kids working on a McDonald's.
Oh.
Yeah, it's, perfect timing to talk about this since so many politicians want to bring back child labor for reasons I don't get it. Anyway, we follow a young girl named Doll, who is voiced by Eva Whitaker, who was in Wolfwalkers as one of the two leads, where they go to find this, like to Screecher's Reach to see if they can find a ghost. And the contrast from the cold and heartless factories to the gray surroundings to the amazing limitless landscapes, only to go to these dark woods and to a cave with some of the best lighting and execution of atmosphere in animation as they encounter the ghost, or in Irish folklore, a banshee, just the way they animate her is scary. Like I said, this is probably the closest we've seen Star Wars hit horror in like a good long while. You don't really think about horror with Star Wars. There's always like depressing storylines and stuff like discrimination and political corruption, and of course, genocide, but nothing quite so horror focused.
And that's why I was so happy with this one, because obviously, as you might have guessed from previous podcasts, you know how much I have enjoyed the works of Cartoon Saloon, but like for them to be the ones to tackle a horror like ghost story set in the Star Wars universe is just kind of like the best of like both worlds for me.
Exactly. And you'd think that's where the scares and the atmosphere of and sense of dread would stop, but something changes about halfway through the shorts, because it slowly starts building up, like from the beginning of Doll wanting something more to her life than working at this sweatshop factory place. And when she encounters the Banshee or the ghost and bends her off, she finds out that the ghost is not a ghost at all, but a woman who has been trapped in there, driven mad by the powers of the dark side. And I'm a little impressed that Disney said, okay, they said you can't show it on screen, but they let a kid kill a person. When's the last time you've seen Star Wars do something like that? And like main Star Wars, not from like Visions Volume 1 or something like that. You don't see like younglings or something causing death and destruction. Like Doll murders someone. And you see that kind of weigh on her as she gets out of the cave, and her friends are like, oh my gosh, we are glad you're okay, but you could have been killed in there. And then the scariest part of the short happens, where a mysterious ship comes down who turns out to be this individual who spoke to Doll through this necklace. And it turns out that throughout this whole time, Doll was training to become a Sith. And the Sith mother, as she is called, who is voiced by Angelica Houston, did something that is so scary. And it's because of how realistic it is of what happens. A person in power took advantage of someone who was not in power or in great living conditions and promised them something of a better life, even if that means becoming a Sith Lord or a evil Jedi and what have you. Because you think like, oh, the ghost woman is really intensely scary because of those beautiful ink colored visuals that they did. But the Sith mother hits harder because she's meant to look like this angelic individual of like, I'm here to save you and bring you peace and a better life. But she's really not. She took advantage of a kid.
Yeah, that's a pretty dark way to end this short, and yet it's still really effective.
Honestly, some of these shorts share similar themes and tones with some of the first volumes. Like Sith is very similar to Duel, which is about an ex-Sith who in that short is a Ronin, which were samurai who had no master and such. And Sith was very much like that, an ex-Sith who did not want to succumb to the darkness and did not want to follow the ways of her old master. And with Screecher's Reach, it's kind of like the Akakiri short, which was the last one of the first volume, where a Sith Lord, without using the Force or like a lightsaber or like lightning or whatever, convinces someone to join the dark side through just mere words. And that is much scarier than watching Darth Vader cleave through a group of rebel troopers like in Rogue One and such.
Exactly.
Yeah, I would say Screecher's Reach is my personal favorite. of the bunch just because of how Lucasfilms was just like, yeah, make a story like this. I am so proud of to see what Paul Young and his team did. I also think I saw Paul Young in a cameo when the kids were on their speeder bikes or whatever, and they passed by those big walker things.
Oh,
In the background, you can see an orange bearded guy, and I think that's Paul Young slipping themselves into the movie, but I'm not entirely sure. I just noticed that during the behind the scenes video when they talked about it, and it was like, oh, maybe that's him, because that happens all the time. Animators, writers, producers will put themselves into the background of your movies, shows, and what have you.
if that is him, then that's a really cool little cameo.
Yeah, yeah. Now, for the third one, In the Stars by Gabriel Osorio by Punk Robots, which is a studio in Chile. This one is also tackling real world history, but using Star Wars to tell their story of the first South Americans. Here, it's about, well, these two sisters, Koten and China, who are the last of their kind and had to push back against this huge industrial empire location to get the water back and to see the stars in the sky again that have been covered with smog and clouds caused by the factories. I mean, and this isn't deep or complex. It's very upfront about what this story is about.
This is about as classic a Star Wars story as any of these are going to get, while still staying like culturally specific to South America. As far as like the production of this one, I think it's really cool how they blend like stop motion and building practical sets with CG animation. It's a really cool and kind of innovative way to incorporate mixed media.
Once again, with these shorts, it's like, you're telling me there was a studio in Chile this whole time that could make something like this, and nobody has given them like all the money in the world to make a movie or a show? It's amazing how they were able to pull off these visuals. I loved the look of the aliens. I loved their performances from Valentina Mur and Julia Oviedo. And I love that even though there are still like Jedi and lightsaber stuff here, this is the first short, or what to me feels like the first short, that focuses on and calls back to the Last Jedi, like theme of everyone can use the Force. And here, the older sister can, and the younger one feels the connection to the world around her. And they, of course, use their Force powers to take down the factory and stop the water and light pollution. Like, it's just really good. I loved this one. You'll hear that throughout this whole episode, that it's just like, these are all really good and very well crafted stories.
Yeah, I really can't complain about any one of these. The only one I probably didn't like as much, but still really enjoyed, is I Am Your Mother from Aardman Animation, directed by Magdalena Osinska and written by Holly Walsh and Barunka O'Shaughnessy.
Right, this is the one by Aardman. And for a lot of people I've talked to, this is considered the weakest. And I'm like, I don't know. Granted, it's the shortest of the shorts.
That's why, for me personally.
Yeah, I can understand that. It's like it doesn't give you a lot of time to feel as immersed into its world, even though it's about a mother-daughter duo who the daughter is very embarrassed about her mom because she can be a little awkward and silly and such, and that they fly what do they call it? The spaceship equivalents to a tugboat.
Something like that.
It honestly reminds me a little bit of Fortune Favors Lady Nikuko in some regards, just in terms of a story of a daughter and mother, and the daughter's like, oh my gosh. And it's probably the most straightforward short, the most family-friendly one, since it's just about a young girl who reconnects and bonds with her mother and stops this evil hoity-toity pilot and her mother from winning this race. I think my favorite detail, though, I mean, outside of the amazing animation and character work from Aardman, is the fact that Wedge Antilles is on that grind to use his image and fame to sell merchandise.
Yeah, they brought back Dennis Lawson to voice Wedge Antilles, and this is kind of significant because for the longest time, Lawson was he wanted to distance himself from Star Wars, but I guess this recent resurgence of the property has kind of made him a little bit more enthusiastic to return. But to see him in this short is kind of fun. Also, there's a cool Wallace and Gromit cameo, the robot cooker.
I have to look through that again because I don't think I spotted them. And I just love that, like I said, Wedge being there and being like, yeah, I was part of the rebellion that took down the Death Star. Why not use my fame to make some cash? And I love the little details to all the different ships and all the little visual jokes that Aardman's really good at. I love the aliens laughing at the Wookiees, and they do the most family-friendly version of the Wookiees ripping off someone's arms. It's a straightforward short, but I love the moral of the story of them, of the daughter feeling realizing that she needs to be thankful for what her mom has done to make sure she can go to this fancy academy and just treasure those moments with her.
One thing I will recommend about all of these shorts is you should definitely go and watch under the extras tab all of the filmmaker focus behind the scenes docs. The one for I Am Your Mother really made me appreciate this short a little more because it is a very personal story about Magdalena Osinska's own kind of upbringing, how she was kind of embarrassed with her mom at times, but that's kind of part of growing up, is embracing where you come from, sort of accepting you are pretty much a product of your parents. Seeing that as sort of a central theme in this short, I thought it's a very important message, and I'm glad that this was showcased in this short.
It was a very charming short. I very much liked it. Our next one is Journey to the Dark Head, which is by Studio Mir and directed by Byung-gun Park and written by Jung Se-rang, which is about a Jedi and a mechanic who travel back to this location that the mechanic grew up at to take down this mountain thing that they think can help win the war between the Jedi and the Sith, only for a Sith from the Jedi's past to find them. And well, it's Studio Mir. They make action ensues, and once again, what is stopping the live action films and shows from the Star Wars franchise from doing what these animated shows and shorts are doing with these dynamic action set pieces?
Mir has always been great at delivering very dynamic action sequences. And the fact that they are now doing a Star Wars short in both English and Korean is pretty cool. I unfortunately didn't get a chance to watch the entire short in Korean, but the behind the scenes documentary showed a few clips that sound just amazing.
Yeah, I need to rewatch this short in Korean because I liked the voice cast for the English dub, with Ashley Park, Eugene Lee Yang, and Daniel Day Kim and Greg Choon. There was a little awkwardness with the writing, and I don't know if that's just a translation thing or something, but the journey of the Jedi letting go of his rage and finding, once again, this is the second short I feel like that's all about the balance between light and dark, with Sith being the first one, and this one also being more about that. Because the Jedi could have easily joined the dark side because of his rage against the Sith Lord that took down his master and the Jedi, but he overcomes that anger to take him down. Another head decapitation. Amazed that Disney was like, yeah, you can do it as long as it's not on screen.
That's the catch.
Though for my second favorite short, I think it has to be The Spy Dancer, which is from Studio La Cachette from France, directed by Julian Zhang and written by them as well. This very much reminds me of those wartime era stories of, in some regards, Casablanca in some ways, or the side story to Inglorious Bastards, where it takes place at this empire-occupied jazz bar and dance club and such. The people who work there, the entertainers, the lead attraction and such, are using the fact that they bring in a lot of stormtroopers to put trackers on them for the rebel cause. Ends up with their plan going sideways when a general shows up, and the lead performer, Loe, thinks that this was the man who was in charge of her village getting slaughtered and her son being taken away. When you find out that it's someone else and she hesitates, almost gets her and the other people there killed. And then the twist you find out is that, spoilers, the general that she fights and tries to convince him to join the rebels and such is her son. And here we have another like very sad and very scary story of the Empire taking people like kids and, or like in this case, a baby, and indoctrinating them to the Empire. Because he's pretty much brainwashed to the dark side and thinks that what they're doing is the best thing. For the short to end on a very somber, melancholy note. But it helps that there are these small little bits of character animation that brings like a charm, life, and some humorous moments to the overall dramatic story. But it's just gorgeous. I love I'm assuming digital ink paint like look of the 2D visuals to life.
That first dance sequence where she goes down into like, you know, the center of the stage and just like parachutes down with all of the fabric and all of that was just gorgeous. And I love the way like she moves through the crowd, putting all the trackers on the stormtroopers. The way they animate that is kind of perfect. And like the twist at the end is kind of the perfect inversion of the classic "No, I am your father" twist with Luke and Vader.
And by the way, if this studio sounds familiar, you've probably seen their work before. They are working on the upcoming film Mooey. They did the animation for the short Sucker of Souls from Love, Death, and Robots season 1, when they're in that catacombs and taking down vampires.
I thought I recognized them.
But they are also behind a lot of the animation for Genndy Tartakovsky's Primal. And they did this great 2D animated sequence for a very underrated film called Moon, Guardian of the Moon. Highly recommended. It's one of G-Kids' most underrated films. And yeah, just the beauty of the main dancer and how she just literally flows like water through the crowd. I also just love the fact that they show different body types and different people within the stormtrooper outfits.
Yeah, usually it always just seems like we know from Star Wars lore that a lot of stormtroopers were clones, but you know, you do get to see regular people who just happen to wear the uniform.
Exactly. And for animation fans, the man who plays John, the guy who's like putting together the ship and comes to save the daughter like last minute, is voiced by Lambert Wilson, who you would recognize from the Matrix films as the Merovingian.
Yep.
And he's also the French voice for Ernest in the 2 Ernest and Celestine films.
That's cool.
A lot of these voice casts are great, like whatever language they get. Now for this next one, I thought this was one of the more visually distinct CGI shorts, The Bandits of Golak, which is directed and written by Ishan Shukla by 88 Pictures, who 88 Pictures it's a very well-known studio in India. You would recognize them for a lot of their work and collaborations with DreamWorks. Anyway, they did a lot of work for their series that you see like on Peacock and Netflix. Like they worked on the Tales of Arcadia franchise.
I can definitely see that style.
This one is another very straightforward short. It's about a brother escorting his force-sensitive sister to a location as they are on a train and have to deal with the Empire, of course, patrolling around the train and a group of bandits. And then once they think they are safe, they encounter a general of the Empire, only to be saved by the sister's Jedi Force powers and Rugal, the Jedi that will help Rani on her journey. And I liked how the CGI looked with this one. It's very painted. It does use the same like traditional CG animation weight to the characters, but the distinct visual flair of the CG gives this one its own distinct look. Not to say that you can't see some like, oh, there's some aspects they could have maybe tweaked a little, but I liked this story of a brother and sister and a brother trying to keep the bond with his sibling as long as possible before this inevitable change in their lives.
This is a nice sibling bonding story that does have a bittersweet ending, but it ends on like a little bit of an optimistic note that like, you know, even though they have to be separated, they still like give each other sort of memorabilia, and the story between them is very heartwarming. And also just the design of this world. This is another example of how culturally specific these shorts get, but they still feel like they belong in Star Wars.
Like you would think the universe, the galaxy is so vast, there would be a planet that's inspired by India and its multiple cities. Like, I guess it kind of reminds me of that one. I don't know if you've ever seen the Thumb Wars special by the guy who made like Jimmy Neutron and such. He makes a meta joke about like one of the Vader's generals being like, yes, I have a question. Why do we all talk in British accents in space when there's no Britain? So it's just like, yeah, why not have a planet that's inspired by India and its cultures and such?
I love how just very extra the Inquisitor looks. They talked about in the documentary special, like how nothing in like Indian culture is simple. Everything has to be very complex. The way the Inquisitor looks, like with all the different like nooks and crannies on his outfit, it's just kind of perfect, like a villain design.
Yeah, just love all the little details, and the music was also great. The music was really good for all of these shorts.
Yeah, agreed.
And our next one is at the very least partially Japan produced one called The Pit by Leandre Thomas and Justin Ridge, with it written by Leandre Thomas. And it's produced by D'Art, Shitagio, and Lucasfilm. This is the very first in Japan Black-owned animation studio. The fact that the story that they made, it makes all the sense because once again, they are culturally connecting Star Wars to a very real thing that is going on, not just in the past, but now. With The Pit being about how the Empire got a bunch of prisoners to dig a huge hole in the ground to find those kyber crystals, the little things that you put in your lightsaber and such. And once they dig to the very bottom, like they hit the bottom of a world in Minecraft, the Empire, while this was going on at this whole time, built an entire city off of the prisoners' work, which, you know, don't tell me that there's nothing political in Star Wars when this is extremely political. The Empire just leaves all the prisoners in the pit to die. And the prisoners have to find a way out to get the people in the city just to be like, for the love of God, find your humanity. We exist. We are here. Help us. While I'm not a huge fan of the visual quality of this short, I think it looks solid, but it's probably my least favorite short on a visual level. It's a very powerful story.
I didn't mind the visual aesthetic. I appreciate the fact that, as they kind of mentioned in the filmmaker focus, it really does look like a blend of Eastern and Western sensibilities. But
right,
you can also tell that this was written around like 2020 by how the stormtroopers are depicted. It reminds me a little bit of anytime you see like police force at the scene of a mass protest, it very much gives off those vibes.
This has a lot of commentary about discrimination, forced labor, and the abuse of labor, how the wealthy look away from people who are in a lesser situation, who are just asking and just telling people that they exist. They got some pretty good names for the voice cast, where we have one of the characters who ignites the whole thing is the crux of the story is voiced by Daveed Diggs. Eureka, Crux's sister, is voiced by Anika Noni Rose. Then we also have Cedric Yarborough, who plays the old prisoner, and the commander of the stormtroopers is voiced by the always amazing Steve Blum, and Matthew Wood plays the voice of the stormtroopers. It has a good ending. I like the story. I just wish the anime visuals were a little better, but like I said, all of these shorts are great. I'm not going to say there was one that was bad. Like with the first volume, I think The Elder is the weakest of the bunch, not because it's by Studio Trigger. It's the fact that Studio Trigger went in a different direction with their typical visual flair. And it just seems like they didn't go all the way with it, because it was meant to be this like murder mystery thriller of those two Jedi who are on this planet trying to find this mysterious old man that landed there and is a Sith. And it's meant to be like scary and such, this unnerving force and the difference between powers at different ages. But it looked so flat as a short. Here, I think this one looks a lot better. It should have been like what The Elder should have looked like.
I can kind of see that.
Like, sorry, while watching this volume, I rewatched the ones from part one. And I was just kind of like comparing and contrasting them. Even though there's nothing too comparable with them because it's, all different studios. But some of them share, like I said, similar story themes and such.
If I recall correctly, one of my more hindsight criticisms of Volume 1 is that I think too many of the shorts are very Jedi focused, while this collection is a little bit more varied. Like, yeah, there are Jedi involved, but this is more about like the common folk, and they stick a little bit closer to the classic like good versus evil, like the rebels versus the Empire. But they do it in a way that's like very specific to either individuals or like the culture that these studios come from.
I would say that, like, before we get to our last short by Triggerfish, they are very much about the common individual. I would argue that maybe just one or two are very Jedi focused, like from start to finish. The others have either Force adjacent stuff or are very much not Jedi at all. A good example of that is this last one, Au's song by Triggerfish in Africa, directed and written by Nadia Dairies and Daniel Clark, about the people of Korba who this is where apparently the origin of the Kyber crystals are, which makes it kind of interesting because you kind of wonder, okay, so where did all these other Kyber crystals come from all over the universe? Like, it's one of those lore things that I'm kind of curious about. Like, how did nature expand so far across the galaxy and such? Anyway, the people there who work there as miners are basically working on this one very specific location, which was inspired by a real place in Africa, Cape Cod. And we follow a young girl named Ao, who is voiced by Pilo Jean Tie, and her father is voiced by Tumisho Masha, who I think has the best performance of the shorts. They encounter this Jedi, Kratu, voiced by Cynthia Erivo. The whole thing is about Ao, who wants to sing, but things keep happening when she sings, like the kyber crystals react to it. So she's told by her dad, who's very loving but also very protective, like, you have to be careful, you can't sing or else it'll cause trouble. It's not a like anti-music short. It's not like, or a music-based short, or not a fully music-based short like the second one from the first volume, Tatooine Rhapsody.
Oh, yep.
This one is just more about a character, a girl finding her way. Like, what does she want to do with her life? She finds out when she sings, the kyber crystals, which were so at that point tainted by the evil of the Empire, react very aggressively to her singing. But her voice is all about heals the kyber crystals. It purifies them. She is literally using her voice to find her destiny. Once again, I am so in love with Triggerfish's animation. I know that they made puppets and such, but their mix of those puppets with CG and mimicking stop motion, I love the designs of these characters. These are probably my favorite designs of the entire volume.
They are very pleasing to the eye, these designs, and you can tell how great the production of like 3D animation has become is when I have to ask whether it was like actually 3D or stop motion or a mix of both. And Triggerfish really does a good job of leaning into that aesthetic.
Yeah, and I also just love that this last one was just very quiet. It wasn't just like nonstop action or they had to keep your attention and such. It was all about just this quiet girl finding her purpose, and at the end going with Klaatu to become a Jedi. It's a beautiful one to end on in how like it's telling its audience like, find your voice, find your path. And for parents to be like, we get that you love and are protective of them, but make sure that they find their own ways in life.
I like how it's a coming of age film for both the daughter and the father. One learns like, where she wants to go moving forward. But for the father, it's like figuring out the right balance between like, how can you protect your offspring without overstepping?
This is why animation is so cool and like why storytelling is so great. You can tell these kind of stories because even without the Star Wars license and property attached to these shorts, these are still amazing stories. They aren't just heavily tied down to the property and such.
Star Wars is merely the sandbox. Each of these shorts is the individual creations that these writers, directors, artists, animators, this is what they're able to do with this canvas.
It's why it's so frustrating right now, like on top of the writer's strike and how the entertainment industry is not taking animation seriously, even though they craft some of the best stories that are told throughout the year, whether it's an animated show or a film, and that the people who work on those shows are not respected, or the writers dealing with the writer strike right now are not respected, even though there would be no Andor without the duo and the team that they crafted with from Chernobyl. There would be no Loki without someone saying, what can we do when we have control of the trickster god of the Marvel universe? We wouldn't have Cartoon Saloon if they were forced to work with AI, and that AI crafting such soulless artwork or artwork in parentheses. And the fact that there are so many people who are like, well, fine, we'll just replace you with AI, which art is not something you can replace with AI.
Art requires like the human touch, the human eye. It's that sort of human experience that makes art what it is. You can't replicate that with code or artificial intelligence.
The irony of it all is that the AI needs references, so you need humans to make said references. They wouldn't have anything to go off of.
Exactly.
So it's frustrating right now why you need to help and support the Writers Guild of America, East and West, and animation industry by actually watching the stuff that you want to support. Watch stuff like Fired on Mars on HBO Max. That's a really good and great and fascinating, well-written show. Don't let it get replaced by greedy executives who want to earn another unearned $1 million paycheck and not doing something as reckless as following like Twitter field boycotts, like of canceling your Netflix and HBO Max or whatever, because that's not going to do anything to these people. It's going to do a lot more damage than what the Writers Guild is telling everyone how they can support and what to do and such. Actually listen to the people who are actually doing the striking and such. Anyway, I thought this was a fantastic batch of shorts, and I highly recommend it to anyone. Like, I showed these to my mom, and she's not really a Star Wars person, which I'm not a Star Wars person also. If I could hook them with something like the Star Wars Visions shorts, then anyone can enjoy these shorts. It's just good storytelling, good writing, good animation.
To repeat what I said on Twitter a while ago, if Star Wars Visions is going to be the vessel to get casual audiences into, as you put it, the other side of animation, then so be it. I do not believe in gatekeeping. In fact, I believe the opposite. I believe that gates should be open and anyone should allow themselves to expose themselves to the wonderful world of animation. And in Visions Volume 2, it literally is animation from around the world.
Really support the stuff you love. And but that's all we have to say for this one. We're going to be taking a break for a week, and then we'll be getting back onto the spring 2023 anime season.
We have a lot of shows to cover this spring, but I'm actually pretty excited for a good chunk of them, but more on that later. Until next time, Cameron, where can everyone find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at Cam's Eye View. I have my own website called camseyeview.biz, where I review animated films and shows from around the world called The Other Side of Animation. I also have a Patreon at patreon.com/camseyeview. That's where you can find me.
And you guys can find me on Twitter at Captain K42. You can check out my quick thoughts on letterboxd.com/CoachK42. And you can follow Renegade Pop Culture on Facebook and Twitter at Ren Pop Culture. You can also find us on YouTube, on Podchaser, subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/Renegade Pop Culture. Listen to all of our podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, basically wherever you listen. And last but not least, everything can be found at renegadepopculture.com. Need an escape? So do we. That'll do it for this episode of Renegade Animation. We will catch you guys later. Peace out.